again, Rebecca, for the great introduction and for pulling together this conference. I'm really honored to join you to talk about one of my favorite topics, actually, which is employee recognition. So in this opening session, I'm going to kick us off with some big ideas about recognition. The first one being why recognition is so important for not only individual success, but for business success as well. Also, we'll look at why so many formal recognition programs really don't have the desired impact. And then I'll hope to leave you with some simple tips on how you can create a culture of recognition at your organization. So let's get started. So first, a little bit about Great Place to Work for those of you who may not be familiar. Great Place to Work is a global authority on workplace culture. For more than 30 years, we've worked with companies all around the world to help them gather feedback from their employees, to gain insights on how they can improve, and also to get benchmarked against other workplaces and be recognized when they've created a great workplace themselves. And at Great Place to Work, we know what it means to be great. We know what it means to be a great place to work. And you might be surprised to hear that it has very little to do with perks and programs that you're offering, and everything to do with the relationships that leaders are cultivating, both within the organization and also the connections that they're making to the work they do and to the people they're working with. So why do we do what we do? Well, it all comes down to our mission. I know Bucket List is a mission-driven organization, and so are we. Our mission is a pretty lofty one, to build a better world by helping organizations become great places to work for all. So in a sense, we're leading a movement to change the way the world works by creating more resilient, successful, and sustainable businesses. Okay, so how do we accomplish our mission? We run the world's largest annual workplace survey, and our reach is expanding every single day. So each year we work with around 18,000 companies or customers. These companies represent 20 million employees in 170 countries around the world. And this gives us access, as you can imagine, to the world's largest collection of employee experience data. So we're really tapping into that employee experience with the work that we do all around the world. And what do we do with our data? We do three important things. Number one, and in my opinion, most important, is we feed it back to the organizations we work with so they can get better, so they can listen to their employees, hear what they have to say, and get better. Secondly, we use our data to recognize organizations when they've created a great place to work. So some of you on the line may be familiar with our Great Place to Work certification program, our badge that certifies that your employees say that yours is a great workplace, and also our best workplaces list that we publish around the world. And then the third thing we do with the data is we use it to understand the employee experience globally. And this enables us to conduct research and uncover workplace trends. So what does our research tell us? So the one thing we know for sure is that there is no one right way to create a great workplace. Every organization must find its own path. However, there are a few universal truths that apply to companies of all sizes, all industries, for-profit, not-for-profit, regardless of the work you do. And we call this the Great Place to Work effect. So what is the Great Place to Work effect? Basically, being a great workplace starts with great leadership. You can't be a great workplace if you don't have great leaders. And those leaders are really responsible for shaping the experience within your organization. And that employee experience is what shapes your culture. and your culture drives performance. So let's take a look at this a little more closely. So we can see here that great starts with leadership, and leaders exhibit a whole bunch of behaviors around, listening to employees, inspiring employees, speaking, and then very importantly, thanking employees. So leaders actually play the key role in employee recognition. So once leaders are able to cultivate these behaviors, then that results in employee experience. And in particular, an employee experience, do they trust the people they work for? Do they have pride in the work they do? And do they enjoy the people they work with? And do they do this consistently across the organization for all employees, regardless of who they are, what job they do within the organization? Third, this employee experience is what shapes the culture of your organization. So you've heard people saying we have a culture of collaboration, a culture of innovation, a culture of belonging, a culture of well-being. Well, you can't just wish this into place. You don't wish a culture of well-being into place. It has to be fostered by leaders and shaped through employee experience. And then finally, for many on the line, the fourth piece is around company performance. So it will be, in fact, your company culture that shapes the performance of your organization. So whether that's profitability, productivity, customer satisfaction, and so on. There's many ways to measure company performance, and we're going to look at some of those today. And I see there is a comment. Yes, you'll be sharing the recordings after the event. Thank you, Rebecca. Okay, so let's dive a little closer into the recognition piece. And we're going to kick it off with an audience poll. And I'll ask Rebecca to help me launch this. So the question for everybody on the line is, what is the most important thing your manager or company could do more of to encourage you to produce great work? Okay, and your choices are inspire me, give me autonomy, pay me more money, create more opportunities to have fun at work, recognize my contributions, or something other, or nothing. I'm self-motivated. So go ahead and respond to the poll, and we'll close that off once we have enough responses. Okay, wow. So everybody should have the poll results in front of you. Probably not surprising that two-thirds of people on the line today said recognize my contributions is the most important thing your company could do to empower you or encourage you to produce great work. So not surprising at all. This one is followed by give me autonomy and inspire me. And so those are, not surprisingly, one of the key motivators of producing great work. So I'm just going to close that off and we'll keep going here. So we know that showing appreciation from our Great Place to Work research and working with thousands of clients on debriefing their results, we do know that showing appreciation is one of the most important things employees can do to build trust in the workplace. So in fact, there's been several studies found that feeling recognized and appreciated is in fact the most important driver of great work. So on the screen, you'll see here, this is a study from OC Tanner conducted last year. And they have found 37% of respondents, based on a fairly large study, said that recognize me is the one thing that would encourage them to produce great work. And this data is also supported with our research. So when people agree that management shows appreciation for good work and extra effort, we see a whole bunch of positive workplace outcomes. So some of them are not surprising. When people believe, they feel recognized, they're 3.5 times more likely to say their workplace is great overall, not surprisingly. But this also extends to some other important outcomes. So when people feel recognized, they're also 2.6 times more likely to believe that promotions are fair. So the recognition piece actually extends into fairness. They're 2.2 times more likely to believe that innovative thinking is encouraged in their organization. And they're 2 times more likely to say that people are willing to go above and beyond to get the job done. And so that discretionary effort piece has some real measurable business impact. Okay, so the point here is we know recognition matters. It's one of the most important drivers of a positive workplace experience. So let's take a look at the how. How do companies recognize people? And we're going to take one more audience poll, tap into you for your opinions on this. So the question is, what behaviors or accomplishments get recognized most often at your organization? And so you see there's some choices here. Strong company financial performance, new clients, tenure, employees living the values, unsung heroes, recognizing people in supporting roles, personal milestones, or professional milestones. So go ahead and respond to the survey now. Okay, so survey says the biggest segment of people said that their organization recognizes personal milestones like birthdays, new babies, weddings, followed by tenure. 32% said tenure. And there was a tie actually for second place: tenure, employees living the values, and strong company financial performance. So again, interesting to note here that as people were typically very comfortable recognizing those personal milestones like birthday, new baby, weddings. This really speaks to the camaraderie that takes place in most workplaces where you build connections with the people you're working with. But also in terms of professional accomplishments, financial performance is pretty easy to measure and recognize. Tenure, also an easy metric to recognize. Once your anniversary comes up, you get that 5-year pin or whatever, as well as employees living the values. This is something we're seeing more of as more organizations aim to become purpose-driven organizations. So thank you again for your feedback on that one, and let's keep going. So we can see that there really is a clear business case for recognition, right? So recognition is the biggest driver of producing great work. We also know that there's really no shortage of opportunities to recognize people. So why do we think that so many recognition programs don't have the desired effect? So let's look at what we know. So as we've just heard, recognition, when done right, key motivator of strong individual and team performance. We also know that in any workplace, many opportunities for recognition. With the Great Place to Work perspective, we heard that leaders are the primary conduit for recognizing. So essentially what we have found at Great Place to Work is, regardless of what programs you have, there can be no culture of recognition if leaders don't stop and say thank you to their employees. So this is an important one. And finally, with all that said, who typically has the responsibility for designing recognition programs and rolling them out in the organization? typically HR has an important role in enabling a culture of recognition. So these are all the things we know. And finally, despite what we're seeing as increased investment in recognition programs over the last few years, many of them aren't hitting home with employees. They're not having the desired impact. And so why do they fail? Why do our current recognition programs, fail is maybe a strong word, maybe we'll say don't have the desired impact. Even just yesterday, I read a study launched by HRPA here in Canada that revealed that only 52% of respondents said their employer has a formal recognition program. And of those, only half said their recognition program was effective. So 25% of people felt that their organization had an effective recognition program. So let's start looking at some of the potential barriers to effective recognition, as well as some solutions. And so we're going to try something different. I see we have a lot of people on the line, and people have been typing into the chat. So now I'd like to invite you to kind of blow up the chat. This is your chance to share your challenges and your solutions with your peers. So I'm going to get the conversation started by presenting a common challenge that we hear, and then I want to hear from you. Can you relate to this challenge? Do you have a solution to share with your peers on the line? So we're going to give this a try. I have a number of challenges here, and we'll see how far we get with time. I'm going to do my best to keep up, but maybe I'll ask Rebecca to help me out if I fall behind here. Okay, so the first common challenge we hear at Great Place to Work, and yes, we do hear this very often, is a fear of overpraising. So fear of overpraising is really about a fear of diluting recognition by doing it too often. And this is something we often hear from leaders and indeed from executive teams. And so, question for everybody on the line, is a fear of overpraising something that you can relate to? One of the reasons that people don't recognize as often as they could in your organization? And if so, do you have any suggested solutions for that? I'm just going to monitor the chat. So we have some other potential challenges in here. So we've got one here, recognition feeling inauthentic or not personal. So if people are recognizing too much, I think the fear is that people will think it doesn't feel authentic. If praise isn't sincere, there can be a problem with overpraising. Some people say, no, we don't have that problem in our organization. That's great. Some people on the bucket list platform showing that having a tool there to remind people can be helpful. Not keeping it simple, trying to make it too complicated. So we have lots of audience participation here around fear of overpraising. Some people can relate to this, some people cannot. And from our research, what I can tell you is the data simply doesn't support that praising too often is a problem. So that's not something that employees complain about, if you will. The combination of frequency and authenticity is your best bet for an effective recognition culture. So we're not recommending that people say thank you, but you obviously will follow, make sure you know what you're saying thank you for, give specific examples, make sure it's timely, and so on. And then we've got somebody saying, fear of overpraising, FOOP. Okay, I learned a new acronym today. I love it. All right. So great participation, and I'll leave you with a recommendation from Audra. Make the praise specific and ensure the impact the person had on the organization is called out each time. This helps with authenticity and avoids the hollow phrase, good job. Thank you for that, Audra. Well said. Okay, let's move on to the second challenge that we often hear as Great Place to Work consultants. And this one often comes from HR. It is really a ton of work to plan a really special recognition event. The work often rests on HR, and the goal of planning a really perfect employee recognition event can be a barrier to doing so. So does anyone relate to that? Any HR folks in the line that have had to plan a recognition event, felt it was a ton of work, perhaps felt that you weren't supported in that work, and that kind of put you off planning it? Yes, eat the elephant one bite at a time. People concur that it can be a lot to plan the work. Also, lack of funds or budget can hinder this. Some organizations have actual engagement teams that are focused on this. The work to plan an event, though, is usually worth it. And then this one last one from Kristen: events are hard since they never please everyone, and then you do all the work and you still get complaints. So I think we can all relate with that one. This one other comment is it's supported, but nobody really realizes how much work it is to plan a really great event. So suggested solutions from us. One thing our research shows us is you don't need to plan the perfect recognition event. Quite often, more frequent, smaller, less splashy events will have more impact, and they'll be able to be more timely. So people will see the connection with the event that you're trying to recognize. So don't hold out for that perfect event. As the audience knows here, you will never please everybody all the time. But think about planning more frequent events, smaller events, to have a bit more impact there. Okay, all right. Next one we're going to look at is recognition programs are outdated. Who is struggling with this one? Has anyone been giving the same 5-year pin for the last 40 years? Or are you updating your recognition programs often? Okay, with bucket list, your programs will never get stale. I love that. Does anyone have a legacy program that some people don't want to let go of? And I'm not going to pick on the 5-year pin, but it could be like a 5-year pin that you've always been doing. And perhaps the legacy program that some people think are don't want to let go of are really not valued by employees anymore. Looking at the chat here, employee of the month. Yes, we have a pin program and people want more. I love it. So the thing about the pin, the thing about the 5-year pin, I do seem to pick on the 5-year pin, but really it's not about the pin. The pin is actually a beautiful symbol that your employer appreciates you and your tenure with the organization. The problem is how the 5-year pin is delivered, right? So is the 5-year pin delivered at a town hall meeting where your leader mentions a few of your accomplishments in the last 5 years? Or do you come in one day and find a 5-year pin on your desk? So I think the important piece here is sometimes when we think recognition programs are outdated, it's really the delivery that needs a refresh, right? So certainly recommend that people evaluate your recognition programs often, refresh annually, and it might not be, getting rid of the program altogether, but giving a fresh spin on how it's delivered. Okay, and great. Yeah, our legacy program was large sums of cash bonus. Excellent. But we're so much larger and can't sustain that. So I think from Heather, that's also an important point, is sometimes we outgrow our legacy programs and need to get a bit more creative in the design of programs. And I love the final comment from Dawn here, monthly celebration that honor all awardees during the month, along with our employee and volunteer of the month. So making that presentation of the award a bit special for your employees. Okay, so how are we doing for time? Pretty good. Challenge number 4, and I know we're going to get a lot of feedback here because I've already seen this coming into the chat. Lack of leader involvement in recognition. So you've just heard me share that our Great Place to Work research shows that you cannot create a culture of recognition if leaders are not saying thank you one-on-one on a regular basis. So anybody here struggling with leaders not thinking recognition is their job, not getting involved in saying thank you? From Kayla here, old school thinking. They should just come and work and do the job. Why do I need to thank them for doing the job? Well, why? Because they're going to work harder if you say thank you. Anyone else struggling with leaders that don't say thank you or don't want to recognize employees for doing their job? So for some leaders, it's not hardwired. Okay, so we know that some leaders are going to naturally be great at saying thank you, very effusive with their praise, and remember to say thank you. And then we also know that sometimes we have leaders promoted, maybe they're good at their job, maybe they're a good programmer, and all of a sudden they find themselves in a leadership role, and they've never really learned how to lead people, right? And so this is where the next piece comes in with the need to actually train leaders on how to say thank you. So this sounds so basic, but we need to remember that not every leader comes into their role with deep knowledge of how to inspire and motivate their employees. And so sometimes training is what's required to get those leaders exhibiting those behaviors on a regular basis so that their leadership will drive work experience, which drives culture, which produces business results. So, and then one very, I think this is a very real concern from typed in by Nicole. Some don't have time to take the moment for recognition or engage in the recognition program. So whether they do or don't have time, I think what needs to be underscored here is if you take the moment to give that authentic praise, your employee will pay that time back in spades, right? So we know that people are twice as likely to give extra when they feel appreciated. Yeah, don't have the time or not a priority. So definitely need for some training here. I know at Great Place to Work, we do a lot of work training leaders on some of these basics. At Bucket List, you probably also have some tips and best practices to encourage leaders to say thank you. Certainly having a platform can help encourage thanking behavior from leaders, but it's not going to solve the problem if they don't see that as their job. Okay, let's keep going. Next one is lack of peer involvement. So I'm not sure if this is something that any of you on the line struggle with. Probably more lack of leader involvement is more a common one we hear, but also it can be hard sometimes to get employees to thank each other if there isn't a culture of recognition. So we know that to create a culture of recognition, we need leaders saying thank you, but we also need that behavior to filter down to everybody in their day-to-day job. It's not just about the leader saying thank you, but it's about employees absorbing that behavior and saying thank you to each other as well. So recognition isn't just about leader behavior, it's about peer behavior as well. The last challenge I want to talk about here, challenge number 6 is the recognition that your recognition practices might not be the right fit for everyone in your organization. So this is that notion of, you know, do we really need a one-size-fits-all to recognition where everyone gets recognized in the same way? Or do we need more of a customized approach? So who has struggled with that? That one person receives a recognition at a town hall meeting and they're over the moon, and then the next person just wants to crawl behind a rock and disappear. Has anyone experienced that in your organization? Okay, so here's one from Nicole. We recently did a survey asking specifically if people prefer public versus private recognition. Great, easy solution. Getting to know your employees, getting to know how they like to be recognized. Kate here is telling us that you actually have this conversation during the onboarding process. They talk to us about how they like to be appreciated, and we share that with their managers. I love that. Again, here from Alexis, we have a variety of recognition to meet various recipient styles. 5 languages of appreciation is applied. I would love to learn more about that. But the idea here is recognizing employees is not a one-size-fits-all. People will have their own preferences and what they value most in terms of recognition. Some people like lots of public fanfare. Some people like a quiet thank you, but everybody likes to be recognized. And the last challenge I'm going to call out here, and this I think is the trickiest one to overcome, is that you might have great recognition programs, but somehow they just don't feel inclusive. So your recognition programs, maybe it's the same people getting recognized all the time, the same star performers, or the program is too focused on recognizing big splashy accomplishments, you know, or perhaps sales or things like that, versus giving everyone an opportunity to get special recognition. So tell me about your challenges with inclusive recognition. Are your in your organization, do people feel that everyone has the opportunity to get special recognition? And this is actually so important that it's actually a piece that we measure specifically on our survey, that people are recognized for the work they do, but then another question, everyone has the opportunity to get special recognition. So both of those pieces are necessary. Comment here. Yeah, so this is an interesting one because the same people value recognition. The same group of people will be nominated while other groups don't nominate and thus can't ever win. So a bit of a conundrum there for nominated programs. Not to prevent the leaders, though, from looking out for opportunities to recognize everyone on their team. And so it doesn't mean you move into inauthentic recognition, but you, if you will, catch people doing something right, right? So that's how we begin to move the needle on recognition. And another good point here brought in by Leo, recognition and peer support need fluidity, they need momentum, they need resources and structure all at the same time. So, you know, we kind of present, you know, the one simple thing you can do to drive your business performance is say thank you to people, but it's really not that simple. It requires a sort of a structure. Now, saying thank you is simple, but to have a truly effective recognition culture, there are a lot of moving pieces in there. Yeah, so here's somebody saying we use shout outs, and the same 4 people are getting shout outs and recognition at my company. So the solution here, based on our research, is, and like I say, the inclusive piece is the hardest one. giving everyone the opportunity for special recognition. And that could mean as leaders being on the lookout for opportunities to recognize staff that don't often get recognized. It could also mean creating recognition categories that are diverse. So rather than just recognizing for sales or customer service, we could recognize for unsung heroes, so support people that are contributing to the success of the project. They often get overlooked in the recognition piece. And many of our best workplaces, in fact, specifically have programs to call out the support person of the year or the unsung heroes that contribute. And it encourages everyone to think about not just the rock stars that are driving initiatives forward, but also the people working quietly behind the scenes to make success happen. Oh, and here's another one. We've also tried giving prizes for people who give recognition. And again, it's the same 4 or 5 people giving recognition too. So lots of work to be done here. I think understanding some of the common challenges that companies face, as well as some suggested solutions, both from the Great Place to Work research, but also from your peers here on the line, can be very, very helpful. And, you know, start with 1 or 2 commitments. If you're in HR, pick 1 or 2 things you've heard today that you think applies to your organization and try and move that forward. Maybe it's training leaders. Maybe it's a simple lunch and learn for leaders on how to say thank you. Maybe it's switching up your recognition categories, so you're making sure to prompt people to recognize support people or unsung heroes. Yes, why not make those unsung aspects part of an organization's performance metrics? And so we're going to look at that integration piece on the next slide. This is a really good transition, Po, and thank you for sharing that. Okay, so lots of good ideas here. And so I'm going to leave you with a few tips, if you will, for creating a culture of recognition. And so the first one is thinking about what you're recognizing. So what gets recognized in your organization, it signals what your organization's true priorities are. What we know is what gets recognized gets repeated. So make sure that you're recognizing the behaviors you want to see more of. So not just, you know, more sales, better customer service, but also people who support those roles. So recognize the behaviors you want to see more of. So expanding that notion of what you're going to recognize. The second is who. So we know that your leader is the most effective person to say thank you to their immediate team, second only to your leader's leader. So people really value a thank you from their leader, but even more so if their leader takes the time to escalate that appreciation 1 level up, that can double the impact, okay? So recognition, who's doing the thanking, the leader or the leader's leader. But we also know there's an important role for peer recognition to create that culture. And we also know that HR plays a very important role in recognizing, creating recognition programs at work for your culture. So you heard me say at the beginning of today's session that one of the things we know about culture at Great Place to Work is it really has very little to do with the programs and practices, but everything to do with the relationships at work. And I think this is important for us to keep in mind as we, as HR professionals, are enabling recognition. So creating an awesome recognition program like Bucket List, where you have this platform, that alone is not enough, right? We know that we need to encourage this relationship building from people all across the organization, where thanks are flowing freely from person to person. So the tools can be a great way to support that culture of recognition, but it needs to start with relationships. So I think that's an important piece. And don't get me wrong, I absolutely love recognition platforms because I think they do a good job of reminding people and giving people sort of an outlet to give those thanks as well. And then with under the who as well, actually, we just go back there, a reminder to everyone that the approach, whatever you land on, the approach really needs to be inclusive and that it's giving everyone an opportunity to get recognized in your organization. Everyone who does great work should have an opportunity to be recognized. When, as often as possible. So overpraising is actually not a thing. As long as your praise is specific and authentic, don't worry about overpraising. You can put that aside. How? Authentic, personalized, and integrated with the company culture. And this one really ties back to the what, recognizing the behaviors you want to see more of. I think a solid recognition program really begins with understanding your company and the culture you want to create. And then figuring out what are those behaviors that you need to support, that you need to encourage in order for your company to be successful. So recognition really isn't just about being nice to people. It's workplace recognition isn't just about being nice. It's about understanding the behaviors that you want to see more of, because those are the behaviors that will support your business success, and then finding a way to encourage and call those behaviors out.